around me falls, trapped between these four walls.
Welcome to Ask the Therapist. My name is Raj Mehta, and I have a very inspirational guest today. Today with me, I have Jeannie Richards from Bryan's Hope, who I consider honestly a hero, a real American hero. And Jeannie, welcome to our show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Raj.
Glad to hear that. Jeannie, tell us a little bit about your organization, Bryan's Hope, and why you formed it.
I started Bryan's Hope about a year ago when I realized I was going to about one funeral every other month.
Wow.
For a young adult in my neighborhood that I knew personally, and they were dying of heroin. So I created a Facebook page called Heroin Epidemic in Waterford, Michigan.
Wow, okay.
And it blew up.
Really?
From there.
Wow. And so how about your personal issue with addiction? Have you dealt with addiction on your own or with your family?
Certainly with my family.
Okay.
In many capacities. The one that was the most heart-wrenching was with my 26-year-old son, Bryan.
Okay, so Bryan has passed away.
Yes.
From a heroin overdose, as I recall.
Yes.
So what was Bryan like when he was growing up as a young person? What was he like, personality-wise and health-wise?
He was the second son of 3 boys, a total of 4 kids. My daughter came last. My oldest son is born a dwarf, so
Okay.
even though Bryan was second,
Right.
he was always the biggest.
Right.
And he was very handsome.
Wow.
And very big. He was so helpful to me with the other kids, the
Okay.
handicapped son and the
Right.
younger kids.
So was he kind of like a leader, somebody you can actually count on when it came to getting things done and being responsible?
Around the house, domestically.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was absolutely a leader and so helpful to me.
That's great.
In the outs on the community, he was much more of a follower.
Okay, all right. He had his role in both sides, right?
Yes.
So when he was coming up, you noticed at any point during his adolescence where he might begin using drugs or alcohol or a behavior change possibly?
Actually, yeah, when he was about 12, 13 years old, it kind of started with more of a real aggressive behavior
Okay.
in school than
Right.
anything. And he was suspended often for incorrigible.
All right.
And finally, he was suspended permanently and sent to the courts.
This was in middle school or high school?
Middle school.
Wow, okay.
First year of middle school.
Right.
And he was put into a court-ordered school program, and one thing led to another,
Yeah.
and he could never complete one program.
Wow.
And from the age of 14 to 18,
Yeah.
he was in the juvenile justice system.
Okay. So how about with regards to alcohol and drug usage? When did that kind of begin for him?
When he was released at the age of 18,
Okay.
I want to say he probably started at that point acting like a normal teenager would have at 13, 14, but
Right.
because he got locked up.
Yeah, so he wasn't developing while he was in the system then?
No, he was just being babysat.
Right.
And learning other great and wonderful
Was he receiving
things.
therapy or help while he was in there?
Not really, no.
Wow, that's another wasted opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So when he gets out, you have him back at the house, what do you notice as far as, we're talking about hard drugs eventually going on to heroin. When do you first get an idea that he might be using the harder drugs?
I never knew beyond drinking some beer. He wasn't a real big drinker. I know he smoked pot, a lot of
Okay.
pot. And then I became aware of him taking Vicodins.
All right. How is he getting access to Vicodin?
He did have some injuries,
Okay.
a broken ankle, a couple back injuries that led him to medical visits and
Yeah, so the doctors
and
had given him
doctors
the
prescribed
Vicodin
them.
with, originally with real physical health issues in the
Yes,
beginning, right?
absolutely.
But later on, was he actually going doctor shopping and
Yes,
okay.
he was. When the doctor said, you know, you're not getting any more from me because your ankle's fine or your
Right.
back, he had a Blue Cross card
Oh, boy.
from me and my husband,
Right.
and he went anywhere and everywhere and got whatever he wanted
Yeah, that's amazing.
for $5 a script.
Right. And so in America right now, regards to prescribing of Vicodin and Oxycontin, all these drugs, America is only 5% of the world's population, and we consume 99% of the world's Vicodin. And those drugs are not coming, from Mexico or from Colombia. Those drugs are coming from doctors and legitimate pharmacies. So is there a behavior change that begins to take place when he's using Vicodin?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I didn't notice it so much in the beginning, but I think as it progressed to where he was probably taking 20 at a time,
Wow.
I started certainly noticing, even before the 20 at a time.
Right.
But, it was just a lot of moodiness, irritability, or sleeping when you wouldn't expect them to
Right.
sleep, and be up cleaning when you wouldn't expect them to be up cleaning.
Yeah. And the pinpoint pupils too?
Yes.
Okay. And the nodding out?
That I didn't really notice until
Okay.
I realized he was on heroin.
Wow. And so as he's using Vicodin, is he ever going to come clean at some point and say, hey, Mom, I'm taking Vicodin, I can't stop. Will you get me help?
He never did.
Wow.
And I never figured it out, that he was taking them to alter his thinking and
Right.
feeling.
Yeah.
I always really thought when he was taking them, it was because he needed them. And to be honest with you, at that time, I didn't know that they were as addictive as they are.
Yeah, well, they come in a prescription bottle. So you're making an assumption that it's coming from a doctor, it's coming from a pharmacist, it must be medicine, it must be safe.
Yes.
So when does it begin to change? When do we jump from Vicodin to heroin? How old was he at that point?
What happened is, at 26, he lost our insurance.
Okay.
And so he didn't have that Blue Cross card anymore.
Right.
So he couldn't go to the...
The golden ticket was gone.
Exactly. So he started buying them.
Okay.
And he realized before he could get 30 for $5.
Right.
And now one could cost $5
Absolutely.
or more.
Yeah.
And he couldn't afford that
A
after a
$5
while.
Vicodin, and then you're doing 20 a day, that's $100 a day worth of Vicodin. And also the damage to the liver. Vicodin is filled with acetaminophen.
Absolutely, yes.
So now we're going on to heroin. Did you actually find needles or spoons around the house?
Well, at first I noticed spoons were missing. It should have been my first clue, and I share this with a lot of families now. If your spoons are missing, you might have a problem.
That's a very good point.
I had two granddaughters. I have two small granddaughters, and I kept saying, boy, those girls are taking my spoons and
Right.
using them for playing in
Right.
the dirt. I had no clue at all that my son was using them to cook up his drug.
Right, right.
And for the first 6 months that I was told, my son was 24, and I was told he was using heroin, I would not believe it.
Yeah.
I tuned it out.
Right.
I would secretively look for signs when I was around him,
Okay.
and I would justify anything I found with, no, see, I know he's not doing
Right.
it. I just know he's not.
Yeah.
But one day, my granddaughters, I thought, were in the bathroom playing.
Okay.
Because the door was locked and I kept hearing noises in there. And
Yeah.
I told them to let me in and they wouldn't, so I went and got the bathroom key.
And
I unlocked the door, and my son was sitting on the toilet, and he had the tourniquet thing on his arm, and he was getting ready to inject a needle in his arm.
Wow.
And so I finally realized at that point, oh my God.
Yeah, that must have been terrifying.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
It was very terrifying. And
did he say, hey, Mom, there's a problem here, I need to get help?
He told me, because I sort of leached to him and tried to push his arm away.
Right.
And he told me to get out of the way before I get hurt.
Oh, God.
And he pushed me out of the
That
bathroom.
shows you the power of the addiction.
And he shut the door.
Right.
And he leaned up against it, and he shot his drug up anyways.
Wow. I'm so sorry to hear that. And when we deal with addiction, we talk about people that have prioritized their drug of choice over their parents, their family, their loved ones. Some people are given an ultimatum. Either, stop using heroin or you're going to lose your wife. The wife will say, I'm going to file for a divorce. And sadly, oftentimes, the man will choose heroin over his loved one, over his family. That shows you the power of addiction. Did any of his friends confide in you and kind of say, hey, Jeannie, here's the deal, we're worried about your son, he's using heroin now? Did anybody, any relatives, any other people outside of the family?
Not friends. Two of my relatives told me that I have heard that Bryan's using the needle.
Right.
None of his friends No one
Okay.
other than the 2 family members that had heard it.
Right. So now at this point, you know he's doing heroin. There's no way of kind of ignoring or having any denial, right?
Yes.
So where do you go to get help for a son that's on heroin?
Well, we first started with PACE.
Okay.
Because that's what we were told.
Yeah, that's the Oakland County funding source to get help, right?
Right.
So you call PACE.
We called PACE, and he did an interview and came back for a bed.
Okay.
And he went to a facility, and he didn't stay long. He
Right.
left
Okay.
because he didn't think
He
it
left
was working
AMA
out.
against medical advice. Does he come home after that?
Yes.
Okay. So is he going to any meetings, seeing a therapist? All right.
No.
Okay. And then moving along after that one visit, any other rehab visits after that?
We convinced him, if you're going to stay with us, you're going to have to try another one.
Okay.
And we did, through the PACE office, find another one that was a little further north of our area in another
Right.
county.
Okay.
And it was a 2 or 3 week program, not a detox, just an inpatient.
Right.
And he did go and stay, and he was discharged honorably, if that's what you call it.
Yeah.
But he was in no way, shape, or form ready to return.
Right. So
Because
what's
he
his
started
aftercare
using
plan? Because essentially he's been detoxed at this point. He's off the drug. He's no acute medical detox. But what about the aftercare plan?
They would give him the name of a facility to call
Okay.
to make arrangements for outpatient
Right.
counseling therapy, and advise him to find local NA meetings
Yeah.
to attend.
Right. And that's kind of generic. That's like the cookie cutter stamp of, here, this is where you're going to go to get help. So how about the Suboxone? When did that begin to be used by him?
After a couple of overdose and suicide failure
Wow.
attempts, I was able to have him committed to the psychiatric ward at University of Michigan.
Okay.
And it didn't take very long for him to convince them that he was fine.
Right.
And he needed to return.
He's a charming guy, right?
And, yeah. And we all know addicts are very good at
Right.
manipulating and lying
Yeah.
and deceiving. And so he was released, and I had said, well, you're going to have to try something more, so he decided to try Suboxone.
Okay.
We were told of methadone and Suboxone, and
Right.
he wanted to try the Suboxone.
So what were you told as far as information about Suboxone? Was it told to be an addictive drug or a drug that actually gets you high?
No, it was just basically said to be something that would help curb your appetite
Right.
for the heroin. And it would be in place of, if you take it,
Exactly.
it would act as a,
A blocker?
Yeah.
Okay. So Suboxone is a Schedule III narcotic, okay? Schedule III narcotics also include Vicodin and drugs like that. And so when a person goes from heroin to Suboxone, I mean, the harm reduction model, it is definitely safer, but the solution to a drug problem is never another drug, and that's counterintuitive. Don't fall for specious, ways of thinking. When a person says to you, we're going to get sober and give you methadone as a Schedule II narcotic, people are using methadone and Suboxone. They're physically present, but they're emotionally unavailable. So you must notice when someone was on Suboxone, it didn't appear like he was sober.
no, it did not. I couldn't tell if he was on heroin or Suboxone.
Wow.
He acted the same. He had the same look in his eye.
Right.
And
And as a mom, you recognize this isn't what sober looks like.
no. I was really not happy with the Suboxone results, and it really didn't last long, because after the first maybe 2 prescriptions, he literally would get the script filled and sell them before he ever came home.
Wow.
He would have a full tank of gas, a carton of cigarettes, and a whole bunch of heroin.
Oh boy. Remember, because Suboxone on the streets is about $8 a piece. Yeah, so you got,
A month's worth.
right, 90 Suboxone, you got a lot of money there, right? So what happens later on if you feel comfortable talking about his passing?
Well, I made peace with his passing because I did everything I knew to do at the time.
Okay.
And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing today with Bryan's Hope.
Right.
I would like to be able to share this horrific journey so that maybe other people might be able to avoid it.
Yes.
And with Bryan, we went in and out of different facilities, and we did have Blue Cross.
Right.
And we did entertain the idea of some of the more private, other than the PACE.
Yeah.
Like Brighton and
Maple Grove
Maple
too,
Grove.
right.
What I found with them, as well as PACE, is you have to have them ready
Yeah.
when the bed is available.
And the odds of that are what?
Not real good.
Yeah.
It only happened maybe 2 times
Right.
out of 6 tries.
Yeah.
And we didn't really have a lot of time. It escalated quite quickly from the time he started heroin until he died. It was 2 years, and the first 6 months I was in complete denial.
Right.
For the next 18 months, tried helping him,
Yeah.
program after program, put him out of my house, sent him to Georgia to
Wow.
live with his biological father.
Did that help at all?
Not really, because he swapped alcohol
Yeah.
at the time for his drug of
Yeah,
choice. So
addiction
he
will
was-
mutate. It
he was-
changes from one form to another. It goes from alcohol to heroin. It goes from heroin to marijuana. It goes back and forth.
He was only down there for 3 months, and he drank a lot. He didn't do heroin, but he came back against my wishes.
Right.
And he wasn't back a week, and he was using heroin again.
Yeah.
And that was in September of 2011. And October was a pretty good month for us, even though
Okay.
September wasn't. He came back from Georgia, used right away.
Right.
I didn't let him stay with me.
Okay.
I don't know where he was staying, what he was doing, but in October, he got a van somehow,
Okay.
legitimately,
Yeah.
and a job.
Okay.
So I let him come back home.
Right.
In October and November went fairly well, but by Thanksgiving, he was using heroin again. I
Okay.
wasn't sure
Yeah.
if it was heroin, Suboxone. I just knew that he was using something.
Right.
And it got real ugly from Thanksgiving into December of 2011. He was a person we did not know.
Yeah.
The things he said to us were just horrible.
It steals your son away. It's like having a zombie
My son was
son.
gone for a long time
Yeah.
before that, but absolutely
Right.
made us realize our son was gone. We were forever finding him nodding,
Right.
coming in. We would come in from home, from work, or wherever, and he would be in the chair, and we really didn't know if he was
Yeah.
sleeping or if he was dead.
Right.
And after a while, it happened so many times. Especially like if me and my husband came in together, I'd
Right.
be like, "You check him," and
Yeah.
he would say, "I checked him last time. You check."
Wow, that's got to be emotionally fatiguing.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not funny, but
Right.
looking back now,
Yeah.
because in January, on Saturday the 28th, Bryan had just, from Thanksgiving through Christmas through January,
Right.
he was only working barely, very little. He was
Okay.
sick often, unless he could get a drug,
Right.
whatever one, I don't know. He wasn't speaking to me. He was going in and out of his room, which was in the basement.
Right.
No, just totally isolated himself from us.
Like a vampire, living in the basement, living at nighttime.
It was scary.
Yeah.
We were all really scared. My son, one of my sons, and my daughter, my husband, and myself. There were 4 others that lived in the home at the time. And on this particular day, I needed a crock pot from the
Right.
basement, and I sent my husband down to get it, and he came back upstairs, and I was in the bedroom going through a drawer, and he goes, "It's not looking good." And I said, "What, you can't find the crock pot?" And he said, "No, Bryan."
Oh, boy.
And he didn't need to say any more, because I could tell by the look on his face that
Right.
it was bad.
Right.
So I ran from, my bedroom, which is at the back of the house, to the front of the house, which felt like it took forever.
Yeah.
And I had been saying for weeks, literally months, this isn't going to end well. He's going to die. I know. I can handle it.
You had
I
a
can do this.
premonition.
But during my run from
Yeah.
upstairs to get to him,
Yeah.
I kept saying, "Oh no, God, I was wrong. I take it back. I'm not ready.
Right.
Please don't let this be the time. I'm not ready. I take it back." And I ran through the basement, because of course his room was at the back. And when I ran into his room, he was sitting in the same clothes that he had wore the day before, and he was slumped forward on the
Yeah.
edge of his bed, and there was an end table, and he was kind of head down,
Yeah.
leaning, and I didn't see death at all. I totally felt like,
Right.
here's my chance. I'm going to revive him.
Yes,
All that I've
yes.
learned about naloxone,
Right.
I'm going to breathe for him until...
Right.
So I immediately tried to push him back on his back to lay him flat to
Right.
start doing the CPR, because I knew I could save him.
Yeah.
I just knew I could.
Yeah.
And my husband is in the background saying, you know, stop. Stop. And I wasn't hearing him.
Right.
In my mind, I was going to save him. And I realized I couldn't push him back.
Right.
And I couldn't figure it out at the time why I couldn't push him back.
Yeah.
But he had been dead for 15 hours approximately, and rigor mortis had set in.
I'm so
he
sorry
was
to
stiff.
hear that. Yeah.
And I finally realized that, and whatever amount of time it took me, and I stood back and I looked and I saw the needle, you know, was in his arm, but I had knocked it out of his arm
Right.
when I was trying to push him back.
Yeah.
So the needle was laying right there on the floor. The spoon was on the table. You know, everything was right there. And he was dead, and I couldn't save him or bring him back.
I'm so sorry you had to go through that, Jeannie. I'm so sorry. And I got to say this because it's on my heart right now. I want to apologize to you on behalf of every therapist that failed you, every professional that failed you and your son. There were so many opportunities to help your son, and they were failed. And I want to apologize to you for that. You know, in a perfect world, we wouldn't be living like this, and this would be a priority in our world, treating addiction and helping people fight and get sober. And it seems to be like a secondary thing. I'm so sorry you had to go through this. And I want to comment about Jeannie right now. A lot of people, when they face adversity, they have the option to fight, flight, or freeze. And you look what Jeannie's done with her life, the loss of her son and that tragedy and being there firsthand. And she chose to fight, and she began Bryan's Hope. And this organization is so helpful and so beneficial. It is a resource. It's bryonshope.org, as I recall, right?
bryonshope.org.
And is anyone welcome to go there and ask questions, get information?
Anyone, everyone. Our website is maintained by a couple of wonderful volunteers, and they're doing a super terrific job with it. We have community meetings once a month, and we've had 12 of them a whole year now. Each one of our community meetings, we offer something different.
Great.
A speaker or someone that is like yourself, someone that's recovered, someone, we've had the different drug companies come out and share with us the drug possibilities for those that choose that method of treatment.
Right.
We've tried to offer to the community, because that was the thing. I didn't know some of these things even existed when my son was in this.
And that's the problem, is that the lack of information and the communication's not there. Please tell me about some of the policies that you're trying to implement and change, or have changed in Michigan in particular.
One thing that was so huge to me is the Narcan naloxone. It's an antidote reversal drug that, if given to an overdose opiate person within a reasonable amount of time, you can bring them right out of death.
Absolutely.
Grip.
It is a lifesaver.
And
it's a miracle drug.
Other states are using it and are showing extreme success rates in the decrease of overdose deaths. And I thought, it's a no-brainer. We should have that here, but we didn't have it in Michigan. In fact, there's a lot of things that we didn't have in Michigan, but the bills were kind of all there. They just really weren't being, they were sitting. And so a lot of noise, particularly I know, not just on Bryan's Hope, but on many others in the last year.
Well, families involved too. Families Against Narcotics was supportive on those issues as well.
Yes, they were. We wrote lots of letters, made many phone calls, emails. We wanted to see folks be able to call 911 in the event of an overdose, and the 911 caller not to get in trouble. The way
it shouldn't be a crime to help somebody.
The way our law in Michigan was, the caller could get in trouble, and did in most cases, and the same for the victim.
Half of the overdoses that occurred where a person was next to the individual, they could have saved them, and they were afraid because they couldn't call for help, because if I get caught here, I get a felony charge.
Yes. and people are being rolled out of cars and left on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're not even dead.
Yeah.
They're just breathing so shallow that the person that's with them thinks they're dead because they're high and freaked out anyways. And something as
And
simple
Narcan
as
would have
not-
saved them, absolutely.
And so Governor Snyder did, on October 13
Okay.
of this year, sign the package
That's
into
good
law.
news.
Public Act 311, 312, 313, and 314 is what it's called.
Okay.
Basically, it breaks down to where medical people that are administering it with good faith
Right.
can't be prosecuted if the person doesn't revive.
That's
You
a
can't
good
sue
starting
them.
point, but how about other people, civilians?
There is a civilian component to it. It is, I believe, the 314. You are immune from civil liability if you, in good faith, administer this drug
Right.
and the person doesn't live. But I'm a little concerned because as I continuously read up on
Right.
the legislation, except for the last 2 weeks because I've had a broken arm
Right,
I've been dealing
yeah.
with.
I appreciate you being here, even with your broken arm. Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. Takes my mind off of it. I have noticed that the implementation date
Yeah.
had not been set
All right.
in this particular one,
That's
like in the
suspect.
other three.
Right.
So I'm a little concerned about that because Bryan's Hope wants to start doing naloxone trainings.
Absolutely.
We have purchased the naloxone kits.
That's fantastic.
We've done everything that the law has required. We just want to make sure that we do everything exactly the way that's supposed to be done.
Right, that's
And
fair.
As soon as we can do it, we'll be doing it.
That's great. Any other things you want to comment on as well as regards to changing policy in Bryan's Hope?
I know that there was a House bill this past year, 4486, that did pass into the House. Senate has it right now, and I'm sorry, Senate doesn't have it. It is in question because
Okay.
we're not sure how to enforce it.
Right.
That is something that my legislative committee is going to be working on this
for you.
year. Because now that we have a law that says when we have an individual that's clearly got a substance abuse problem,
Right.
and they're a danger to themselves and others,
Yeah.
you can commit them.
Absolutely.
A family member can sign,
Yeah.
have them committed. The problem is they're not doing this right
Right.
now. It's not being enforced.
It needs to remember, in the old days, they'd say the person has to reach their bottom. They have to realize they want help. Because of heroin addiction, we don't have that luxury. We don't have time to wait around for someone to have an epiphany and go, oh my God, I'm using heroin, things are really bad, I need to go to rehab. Oftentimes, when a person's sticking a needle in their arm, they're not doing any good thinking at all. We got to do their thinking for them.
That's how it should be.
Yeah.
We do it for those that are mentally unable.
Yeah,
and
people
they're
that
in-
are challenged and handicapped, or people that have severe autism,
and they're
we're
in
here to
locked
help.
facilities even.
Absolutely.
And the treatment centers for these folks,
Yeah.
my son just kept walking away.
Right. Yeah.
I think that there's some big important
Those
changes.
are areas for growth, and those are areas for change.
Yes.
And I thank you for all that you do. Absolutely fantastic. God bless you and all your work, Jeannie.
My son's death's not going to be in vain, Raj.
Absolutely not.
Something good is going to come of it.
I know it and I feel
I'm
it.
sure of it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.